Welcome to another terrific tips for business. I, of course, am Terry Watkins, your host and chief idea catcher here at SpinFrogs and of this terrific tips podcast. Why terrific tips? Because you can't spell terrific without Terry, of course, but you already knew that. So, hey, this show, for those of you that don't know, is designed by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs and business owners or people who are thinking about getting into business. One thing that I've learned in business is that we learn from other people's failures and challenges. And that's what this show is all about. Challenges that other entrepreneurs have had, tips, tricks, and habits that they've used to overcome some of those challenges so that you don't fall into the same challenges that they did. So hopefully our show has been serving you. And if it has, make sure you hit the subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. Today, I have the totally awesome Pieter K de Villiers with us. Don't let his name fool you. He isn't French, but he does have French background. He is joining us from across the pond, though, and I'm so excited to have him with us today. He is the co-founder and CEO of the Macanta Software Ltd. It's a small business systems and automation tool, which is really cool. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And he's a two-time Amazon best-selling author. Barefoot Business, the 3 keys to systems to attract more leads. I'm sorry, apparently I haven't had enough coffee this morning. Let me try that one again. It's the Barefoot Business 3 key systems to attract more leads, win more sales, and delight more customers without your business killing you. Who doesn't need that book? I know I want it. We're going to go get it after this conversation. And then he's one of the co-authors and organizers responsible for bringing together expert contributors on 3 different continents to produce another Amazon #1 best-selling international author, Franchising Freedom. And so this is why he's here with us today. He's definitely prolific. He understands business in a way that not everybody does. And so I think he has tremendous value and tips that he's going to bring to us today. Pieter was born and raised in South Africa, and he moved to the UK in 1997. He is married, ladies. Sorry, this eligible bachelor is not eligible. He has married to Sophia and she is a medical oncology consultant. And he's the papa to the awesome Amélie and Olivia. I hope I said her name right. Pieter has a passion for hi-fi, music, books, single malt whiskey, and Smoker BBQs. But as you probably guessed by the Barefoot Business book, he doesn't really like wearing shoes very much. This is where we get along because I don't like wearing shoes either. Pieter, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this is so delightful for me to be able to talk with somebody with your prolificness in the world of business. What made you decide to write some of these books and get involved on this level for business owners around the world?
I think to a large extent, probably the person who benefited most from writing the books is probably me, because it gave me the chance to actually pull together some of the ideas that I've got floating around in my head and everything. And actually, I understand them a lot better since having written the books and being able to pull these things together. But it really is just a case of, over the years, working with many small businesses and seeing the same problems over and over and the same mistakes being made over and over, and not for anything other than the vast majority of people who set up small businesses, and I mean this in the kindest, most positive way, we don't know what we're doing.
We don't.
Yeah. We're just feeling our way around and trying to make this thing work that we're creating. And I just saw that I had some knowledge or skill in helping businesses that I could, if I put it in a book, I can obviously get it out there at a much greater scale than people I can help individually. And then, of course, that also plays a role into our current business and the software we have, because we can help far more people at scale with that than just doing one-on-one consulting or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah. And so some of the things that I love that you mentioned that small business owners and business owners in general really don't know what we're doing. We really don't. And it doesn't help the fact that things are always changing, especially in this digital space.
Mm.
When it comes to marketing, there's so many new marketing things happening all the time. It's a full-time job just to try and keep track of all the marketing things that are happening, let alone actually managing of the different systems and softwares. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about one of the challenges that you had to face when it came to producing this book for yourself and for others.
I think by the time the book was done, I had a lot of these things already in place for myself in my head, and um, looking back, I realize I was a bit like this as a kid already. But for me, everything is a process or a system,
Mm,
and it doesn't really matter how complex it is. It's still that's just a chain of systems and processes, but everything really is a process. And for me, it was really just taking all of that and tying it together. And I suppose I had an unfair advantage in that respect, because I've now reached a point where, and I talk about this in the book as well, it is, if you need to do something more than twice, find a way to automate it.
mm,
And that's something that previously I potentially would have struggled with. And you just find yourself, I remember in my first business, I was working from 4 a.m. till 11 at night, because I was just doing the same things over and over and over, and just having to do those things constantly. And now in hindsight, I can obviously, the lens of hindsight is fabulous, and I can see, well, actually, here's 100 things I could have automated in that business, and it would have saved me an awful lot of time and hassle or anything like that. So for me, it's really just
mm.
everything I now just approach with that lens and say, well, okay, yes, it needs to be done. It doesn't mean I have to do it.
Yeah.
And go from there. And then, of course, the biggest constraint that drives my creativity around that is cost. Human beings, for the most part, can be fabulous, but they're also the most expensive asset in a business. And I try, and it's a focus of our business, to try and make sure that if you're going to invest in having another human being in your business, don't get them to do the menial, repetitive tasks that pretty much everyone is overqualified for. Is automate that stuff out of the way and get them to deliver real value to the business and to the customers.
Mm, that's such a great tip. A couple of them that you said in there. If you do it more than twice, automate it. And I want to talk a little bit about that too, what's involved in creating automation systems, because I've done some automation myself, and that's a whole rabbit hole. So we're going to go down that one in just a minute. But also the comment about humans being the most expensive asset. Absolutely. When you're talking about an organization, payroll is the biggest check a business owner is going to have to cut. So making sure that those individuals are bringing value to your organization, and that you know what it is that you want them doing when you bring them on, so that you have some way to hold them accountable, which does involve some time organizing, planning, systematizing what they're going to be doing, so that way you can kind of keep that production going in a way that you can know is really adding value to your organization, to your customers. That's so good. So let's dive in.
It also, just to comment on that, it's also a way of showing value to that employee, from the perspective of, nobody really wakes up in the morning wanting to do menial, repetitive 2-minute tasks. Nobody looks in the job ads for that description. Come and do mind-numbing work that'll put you to sleep twice a day. Nobody wants that. And if you're going to hire someone, they have skills and ability. Utilize it, rather than just having them there doing something that, to be fair, computers and systems can do cheaper, faster, more reliable, and the computer doesn't get bored. and you only have to train it once.
So true. So true. But a human has to organize that system. A human has to think through what that process looks like. So one of the automation program systems that I've had to do recently is a sales drip email automation. They purchase, they don't purchase, they're in the email system. And so you're thinking through both sides of the conversation. You're creating all of this content. That takes a lot of time. Have you figured out a way to streamline that creativity process to make this a little bit faster for people?
Yeah, I think I'll give you two things that I focus on when I think about it, and when I've worked with clients on that. Is the one is, don't try and do your whole business. It's too much. And if you try and do the whole business, you don't allow for the small things to have an impact to improve the business. And you end up, to a certain extent, the risk is all you do is you automate the bad processes in the business, rather than actually saying, okay, what's the best thing here and what's the best thing here? Oh, because we've put a best thing here at point A, we don't need this thing at point C anymore. Rather than just going in and saying, well, this is what we do here, let's automate it. And it gives you a chance to sort of review that. And the way that I then always break the business down is you can think of it in sort of 6 boxes, 3 at the top, 3 at the bottom. So the 3 at the top, the sections would be or the columns would be the 3 key systems that I talk about in the Barefoot Business book. And I have to say that the inspiration and the drive to actually write that book came from, I was fortunate enough to be in a mastermind group for a day with Michael Gerber of the E-Myth. And that was just incredible. So the 3 columns would be your client fulfillment system, your customer conversion system, and the lead generation system. So if you think about your business as sort of having these 3 engine rooms, and then each of those, they hand over to each other and things might cross. But if you then think, okay, let's go with the lead generation side. If you imagine a duck floating on a lake or on a pond, just serene, just gliding across the water, we all know that under the water, the feet are paddling like mad. But everyone likes the duck just gliding over the water. And the way you look at your business is, okay, what the customer experiences is the duck on the water. What the business needs to produce is the feet paddling at the bottom. And the customer, rightly and for the large extent, don't really care about the feet. And therefore, you always start above the water. So let's say we've got a process we want to automate. Let's go with lead generation. And it's like, okay, the customer comes to the website and they request some information. What we want is for that information to be sent to them. 2 days later, we want them to receive a phone call. And the day before and the day after the phone call, we want to send them another email. So let's say that's our process. Well, that's above the water. And that's the point to start. That's what I want the customer to experience. And then you look below the water and you say, okay, what does the business need in order for the customer to have that experience? And then someone else I spoke to actually pointed out to me that the power of automation in the business is the fact that you've actually pushed a big rock under the duck. And now the duck's just standing there and not having to paddle like mad, but it's still the pretty duck on the lake. And that's that but it's that above the water, below the water line that you want to think about. And then within those 3 systems in the business, rather than approaching it and saying, okay, here's this extremely complex thing we want to do, which even if you know what you're doing can be overwhelming and will give you a lesser result than if you just chunk it down and say, okay, here's this piece. How can we make it as good as possible? And then move on to the next.
Yes. So 1 bite at a time. How do we eat an elephant? Well, we can't eat an elephant all at once. We have to eat it 1 bite at a time.
Yeah.
The iceberg analogy comes to mind too, where you see the tip of the iceberg above the water, but the whole rest of the iceberg you don't see.
Yeah.
And that part is significantly larger than what you see above the water. it's the iceberg of success. So everybody
Yeah.
sees the success at the top, but all of the hard work that goes into making that possible is underneath the surface. I
Very
love the
much.
idea of pushing a boulder underneath the duck, though. That's awesome. I'm going to push a boulder under the duck. So having the processes to do that. What if you're a business owner who you really just don't have a process mind? Like, you're in business because you don't really want to work for somebody else. You know the job, you know how to do the things the right way, but there really isn't, like, you've done it for so long that it's automatic. How do you start to pull that process out so that you can systematize it for somebody else?
I think if you're in that position, the quickest, and it's a bit of a forcing factor, it might be painful, is to get a member of staff and try and show them what you're doing, even if it's just on a part-time basis, because you'll very, very quickly realize where the questions are. And you then just write down for them, when this happens, do this, when this happens, do that. And then soon enough, you'll realize, well, actually, I missed a step. Because it's like, so for instance, let's say you want to drive to the shops in your car. Before you can drive to the shop, what's the first thing you need to do?
Make sure I have my keys.
Yeah. Most people go with start the engine. The problem is you haven't even opened the door yet. but because and it's the same for us in business, because we do things on such it's in the back of our minds now, we don't consider opening the car door as a part of driving somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's a key part of driving somewhere. Whereas if I said to someone how to drive from my house to the local shops, I'm not going to tell them to open the door, because we all assume they know to open the door. And in that analogy, that's perfectly fine. But it's just a good way to think of, well, okay, where does the process actually start? And then just you start by saying, okay, what are the 5 things I do first when I get into work in the morning?
Ooh, that's such a good question.
And then you look, okay, this is the thing I do. And then there's always the question, why am I doing it? As in, what caused the need for it to be done? And then what am I trying to achieve when I do it? And suddenly it starts growing legs, and it extends, and you can then find, okay, well, actually, it's when this happens that needs to happen. And then we do this, and then we do that.
Yes.
And it's the same. Okay, teach someone how to invoice in your business. It's like, okay, the first thing everyone does necessarily is work out, well, what's the pricing? How do we do the pricing? Everything like that. But if you're using software to invoice, that's taken care of, or at least it should be. But then it's like, okay, this is how you add a contact. If we're doing B2B, this is how you add a company and a contact. And then this is how you raise an invoice. What are their terms? And suddenly you can understand that, well, actually, I can easily fill an A4 sheet based on how to invoice. But the advantage is it's going through the trouble of thinking about it that gives you that asset, because next time you need to show someone how to invoice in your business, there it is. That's how we do it. So there's lots of ways around it, but I think saying someone isn't system oriented in their business is a bit of a cop-out, because they are managing those systems and processes all day long.
They just don't acknowledge it.
Yeah, and it's just taking the time to actually say, okay, this is what we do. And I suppose it's a bit more of a longer game, and it's more expensive. You can also have kids, because they'll just keep asking questions. Well, how do you do this? What about that? Why? How? When? How? And they'll certainly pull it out of you. But I think employing someone is a cheaper option.
Absolutely. Somebody who can just ask you the why, the how, the what.
Yeah.
Those are the 3 main questions that get you out of your own way and into the, oh yeah, why am I doing that?
And you can, the thing is, in that scenario, you can use them to create that documentation. They ask you the questions, and ideally record the answers in some fashion, whether it's audio or whether it's on a call like this where we can share a screen and I show you because you can be on the other side of the world. And then it's that person's job to then take that and turn it into documentation.
Mm-hmm.
So they are creating their own training manual, which is then available to be passed on to the next person. And then of course, the part of that world that I really live in is, okay, of that sheet that tells you how you do things, how much of that can we automate out of the way?
Mm-hmm.
So that when you log into your accounting system, if someone has bought something from you or ordered something, they should already be in there. Nobody should have to add them. You've put their name in somewhere, it should automatically end up in the next system. And that kind of automation obviously shrinks your training manual because a lot of the stuff's already done.
Well, and it also eliminates user error, right?
Yeah.
Junk in, junk out. If we put the wrong data in, if we typo somebody's name, if we typo somebody's email address, if we use the wrong number or miss a number and a phone number, that can be done one time.
Yeah.
Or it can be done 5 or 6 times. Which would you prefer? I'd rather it be done one time. You have one source to go back and fix, and it's fixed across the board instead of saying, where else did I have to put that information?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm with you completely that when we think about our process, when we think about our system, yes, it takes time on the front side. It takes a significant amount of time sometimes to think through what we're really doing here, why we're really doing these things. But when we think through it on the front side, it saves us a ton of time on the back side.
Yeah.
Doing the work repetitively, making potential errors because humans make errors.
And I think it's also a key thing that I would encourage people to put it on their wall in bold print is it will never be finished. As long as you start at peace with the fact that it's not going to be finished, then it's an ongoing process of improving the internal workings of your business. That's all it is. You're not trying to finish something, stand back and say, look what I've done, because the needs of your customer, the needs of the business, your own needs, the market, anything can change. And then you have to adapt along to that. So I think it's made a lot easier by just accepting, do it in small bits, and accept it's never going to be finished.
Yes, that's such a good tip. So it's never going to be done, guys. It's an ongoing process. It will always be there. As long as you're in business, there will be systems and tools and things that you need to monitor, automate, change, adjust for the changing needs of even your vision. Your vision might change. Yeah. And that's totally okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. Pieter, this has been so amazing so far. I know we have more things to talk about, but what's the best way for our listening audience to get in touch with you so that they can purchase the book or maybe get a consultation with you to talk about their automation systems?
Yeah, so purchase the book is easy. It's on Amazon, both in the US and over here in Europe, in the UK as well. So that's the easy one there. And as far as getting in touch with me or with the business or anything, easiest bit is the contact form on the website, which is macantacrm.com, or you can just find me on LinkedIn and reach out there. I'm happy to be contacted there. I'm not particularly active on social media, but if you send me a message there, I will get it.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate that. And we'll make sure to drop all of that contact information in the description of this video and of the podcast for those of you who are listening or watching for later. And it'll also be scrolling down at the bottom of your screen later on. For those of you that are listening and watching, if this conversation is supporting you today, please give us a thumbs up. Leave us a comment in the chat. Let us know what's on your mind. I know I always check back the chat conversations after we've gone live and pass those questions along to our guests so that they can answer those questions. But we would love to hear your thoughts about our conversation today and make sure that we're asking all the questions that you want to know, because that's what this show's all about. Very good. So we're talking about this concept is bigger than we maybe initially think it is, because people talk about automation all the time. So they're like, oh, yay, it's going to make life a breeze. It's actually bigger than we think it is, which then leads me to the question of, where is the gorilla that's on your wall?
Yeah, so it's noticed quite often.
I'm sure it is.
So it's a reminder to myself of how blind I am and how blind we all are. So and this is going to give anyone watching this will give the game away. So you can go and find this on YouTube, but obviously you'll know what's happening. So it comes from, there was an experiment done in attention where I think we've got 6 basketball players, 3 dressed in white, 3 dressed in black. And the whites are passing a ball to each other, the blacks are passing a ball to each other, and that they're mixed. It's not that they're on either side of a court or anything, but you have to then count how many times do the players in the white outfits pass the ball to each other. And then at the end of the video,
in this study, yeah,
at the end of the video, it gives you the answer. And then you think that that is it. And then it says, did you see the gorilla? And then obviously you say, what gorilla? And then you go back in the video and you watch it again, now knowing there might be a gorilla. And at a certain point, while they're passing the ball around, a man in a gorilla suit walks into the screen, thumps his chest, and walks off. And that's in the video you just watched, thinking there's no gorilla. You didn't spot, I mean, the majority of people don't notice the guy in the gorilla suit. And it just, for me, it's just a reminder that what I'm focused on isn't necessarily all there is to whatever it is I'm looking at. There is always detail that I might be missing. And it's just a bit of a reminder that I should maybe just move my focus slightly and see what's around.
Brilliant. I love it. It's such a great reminder. And that was a fun study. I remember when it came out, because I did watch that.
Yeah.
So now that you've explained it, I'm like, oh yeah, I did watch that.
Yeah.
And I feel like they also did like a rewind replay of the gorilla, like coming in. Didn't he do a dance move too?
Yeah. He's not trying to be in the video without being noticed.
Right.
He's trying to steal the show. Yeah. But we're so focused on counting how many times 3 other people are passing the ball to each other that you miss a guy in a gorilla suit that's much bigger than anyone else on the screen. and it's the same in life. It's the same in our businesses. We get so focused on something that we miss things that are right there in front of us. And that's, I suppose, to tie it back to what I focus on in work and what we were talking about is, if you can eliminate or automate the small, menial, busy work that let's be fair, these things need to be done in the business.
They do.
It just doesn't mean you need to do them. But if you can automate it or eliminate it through using automation in other places in your business, it then frees you up to actually notice the things that are really important.
Yes, absolutely. It's a great reminder too that the devil is in the details. And oftentimes we overlook the details because we're so busy looking at the bigger picture that we miss the details.
I think it works the other way as well, that sometimes we are so bogged down in the details that the devil is looming large in the corner of the room and we're just not noticing it.
Right. We're missing the bigger picture too. Yeah. And that happens. I feel like a lot of business owners that I talk to get so inundated with the day to day that they forget they're the vision leaders. They're the captain of the ship. And they're just so in the day to day that they forget that they have to be thinking beyond tomorrow in order to move that forward.
A very good friend of mine, he always uses the analogy of a captain on a ship. And he says, if you imagine you're the captain of a ship and you've set a course and you're off, and then you hear a strange noise coming from the engine room, and then you go downstairs into the engine room, you roll up your sleeves, you get all covered in grease, you're in there for 2 days. When you get back up to the bridge of the ship, what do you think is going to have happened to the course you set for the ship? You'll be nowhere near it, and you wouldn't have noticed.
Right.
Because you were too busy with your hands full of grease.
Right. Yeah. Because it only takes a 1% shift.
Yeah.
1% shift can totally change the outcome of where you're going.
Yeah.
It's like if you think about a projector,
Yeah.
where you're looking at angle, right? Well, every angle starts in the same spot.
Yeah. And it's tiny. And that is it's a warning, but it's also a massive advantage, because it means if you're not heading where you want to be, it doesn't mean you have to do a 180-degree shift to change your direction. It can just be a small adjustment to what you or how you're doing things in the business that can completely change the trajectory of where you get to.
Absolutely. Are there some questions that you asked yourself or that you started asking the business owners that you were working with that inspired this book that helped them to discover and realize the gorilla they were missing?
I think one of the big ones is, so in the book and in general, I talk a lot about the cancer of 2-minute tasks. And there's two reasons for that. The one is there's been some extensive research done on our attention span. And if you're focused on a task and someone interrupts you, it's a couple of minutes, doesn't seem like much, but it takes at least 17 minutes for you to get back to the level of focus you had before someone interrupted you. And that's suddenly a big 17-minute window where you can get something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The other side of it, because it's these 2-minute tasks, we think they're immaterial, but they add up. And if you think about it, okay, here's a thing, it takes 2 minutes. What's the big deal? If I can automate it out of the way, I save 2 minutes. And then you start going down, okay, well, it gets done 10 times a day. Now we can save 20 minutes. It's being done by 10 people in the business. We're saving 200 minutes a day. And then there's a whole calculation that adds it up. And you soon realize that there's 104 business days being spent a year performing the small 2-minute task or a collection of 2-minute tasks. And then you think, well, okay, if I could release an extra 104 days in my business year, capacity wise, what would that be worth?
Right. That's like almost half a year.
Yeah. And if you then put money to it and the number of hours, and if you're lucky enough to work an 8-hour day and things like that, even at minimum wage, as it is in the UK, you are spending over £6,000 a year on getting that 2-minute task completed reliably. And it's looking at it that way that suddenly you think, well, okay, I thought that piece of software at $49 a month was expensive, but it eliminates $3,000 worth of work. And I can get it to do other things. That's just the thing I first brought it in for. And now there's other efficiency gains that I can get. And I just think it's being aware of those 2-minute tasks is a big, it can have a massive impact on the business.
Absolutely. So one of my mentors and masterminds that I was part of, one of the ways that they worked to find what those 2-minute tasks were was actually using a spreadsheet. Really simple. I'm going to go old school here. Break out a spreadsheet and track everything that you're doing in 15-minute increments.
Yeah.
And if you do that, then you can see, I spend X amount of time in social media, or I spend Y amount of time in emails. What are these emails that I'm sending? What is it that I'm saying in these emails? If it's something that's just, following up from a nice to meet you at a networking event kind of thing, well, could you template out that email? And could you set it up so that it's automated through a MailChimp system, even, which is free until you hit a certain number of people, right?
And I mean, a really good example of that is, and I'll give the game away here for anyone who sort of pull the curtain away for anyone who signs up for our product, is when you sign up for an account with us, you'll get an email from me. But 99% of the email is a template. And it's just got a space in the middle where I look at your website, learn something about your business, I type one sentence and I click send. But the bulk of the email I don't have to think about again. I don't have to write again.
Yeah.
And it's those kind of things where now sending that email, on the one hand, I'm sure that email contains the information I need it to contain every time it is sent. Because now it's easy to get someone else to send it because they can look at the website and it can scale, but it's uniform. And if I want to go and amend what is said in that initial email, I go and change it in one place, and then the process runs.
Right.
And that and it's like you say, you then look at the list and say, well, okay, out of the 9 things I did in the morning, how many of those, one, do I have to do? As in, am I uniquely skilled to do these things? And also, if they are being done, do they actually benefit the business and or the customer?
Mm-hmm.
And I think you'd be hard pushed to find someone who doesn't have a few things on their list during the course of a week that can just be scrapped. It seems really important when you sit down to do them, but they actually make no material difference.
Absolutely. I love that the biggest thing that we've talked about today is really the habit of asking yourself the questions, slowing down.
Yeah.
A lot of times we're in a rat race. The question is, where are you racing to? At the end of the day, slow down. The work is still going to be there. It's a process that never ends. If you own your own business, it's a business that never ends. So the work is still going to be there tomorrow. Slow down. Ask yourself the question, because when you ask those questions, it's going to free up the time that's actually going to allow you to move faster instead of slower.
Yeah. So, and it's the same if you think about someone like Usain Bolt. There was an awful lot more that brought him success other than every day just trying to run as fast as he could.
Right.
There's an awful lot more training that goes into it. It's not just about how fast can you run from A to B. That's the end result. But if all he did every day was see whether he can run faster from A to B by running from A to B, he wouldn't have the medals he's got.
No, exactly. If you talk with any sports trainer, they'll tell you the thing that makes you go faster is actually not doing that.
Yeah.
If you want to run faster, it's squats, it's leg lifts, it's all sorts of different things that you do to build up your leg muscles. It's swimming because it actually increases lung capacity.
But you can only do it if you stop running.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And which is really ironic. So it's definitely something that we as business owners, we get so inundated and so involved in our own industry. Yeah. That we forget to look outside of ourselves and look outside of our industry and ask ourselves the question, well, how does a runner get faster? No idea. I only know because I've been friends with coaches who've told me different things that they've done over the years to help run. And my husband right now is training for a 10K. So I've learned a lot from him and the things that he's doing to try and prepare for this 10K. And, you know, really not a lot of it is running. He runs every day. Yes. But a lot more of what he's doing is strength training and is lung capacity exercises, which is really interesting. And that does have an impact on his speed and on his endurance and on his longevity. And it's a really amazing transformation to see that. And if you take those principles and apply them into your business, what that could do. Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Pieter, this is so amazing. I do have another question for you, but before we get to that, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you again?
The website, macantacrm.com. There's a contact us. Just give us a shout there. And then also you can reach me on LinkedIn. The advantage of the strange spelling in my name and the K as the middle initial helps to find me quite easily.
That's right. Very good. Thank you. And for those of you that are watching, part of having a marketing automation system starts with knowing what the hell you want your business to do to begin with. How are you trying to serve your customers? Who are your customers that you're serving? So you can make sure that you're using the right language in the right places to have the right conversations and get those leads to convert into clients. And that's where SpinFrogs comes in. We are a forensic marketing firm focused on helping you catch the ideas that stick. And so if you're wondering, how can I take the business that I have, whether it's 5 years old or 25 years old, and you're ready to offload, automate, or make it more appealing for somebody else to transition into your retirement years, we're the company to call, because we can help you get those ideas organized, put a strategy together so that when we put an automation system in place, it's in alignment with where you're trying to go, so that you can continue to grow and reap the benefits of the hard work that you've already put into it. So just get in touch with us, Terry, it's Terri, of course, at SpinFrogs. And I'm happy to have a conversation with you about that. All right, Pieter. So if there was one thing that you wish you knew when you were getting started, or maybe a piece of advice that you would give yourself, your younger self now, to make where you are have happened faster, what would that piece of advice be?
I probably take the other thing you can't see, because there's a window there, so the gorilla's over there, and there's another sign up on the wall on the other side of the window, which came about because of a question that a good friend of mine asked me in a mastermind meeting. We were trying to solve a problem, and it seemed as if we can't solve the problem, and it was going to cause us a lot of headache. And he then just came out with the question, can you solve a different problem? And then elaborated on that and say, well, this thing here is an obstacle, but what problem can you solve that allows that to not matter? You can't fix that. And that's up on the wall, because it is just, sometimes we get stuck because we're trying to fix the wrong thing. And for me, that was, at that time when the question was asked, it was very powerful and quite pivotal. And that's why it's up on the wall, so I see it every day and don't forget.
I love it. Can you solve a different problem? You're right. We do often get stuck in trying to solve this one thing. And I love the idea of the one thing. The book by Gary Keller, The One Thing, is an amazing book, but it does hyper focus us. And if we hit a point where we're asking how, and we can't seem to figure it out, we have to stop asking how about that one thing and maybe start asking how about a different thing that maybe even eliminates that one thing.
Yeah.
So, such a good question to ask. Thank you for that valuable advice. Do you have any other nuggets of wisdom that you'd like to share with our listening audience today?
No, I would just encourage anyone to, when it comes to automation in your business, just start. It doesn't matter how small, because I've seen it time and time again. You start with the smallest thing and you soon realize the benefit. And then you find another thing and you realize the benefit. And it's like a snowball effect that you very quickly get to a point where it's like, where's the next thing? Because this is working really well. I want to automate the next thing, because once you start seeing those incremental values, you then realize, well, actually, across the business, this can make a really, really big change and have a real impact. And it's, again, don't think in order to automate your business, you have to automate your entire business. Just start with one small thing and just see the benefit in a low risk environment, and then just grow from there. It's like I always say to my kids, I always talk to them about it, and they know every time they use the word can't, money goes into my piggy bank rather than theirs.
Oh.
Because I always make the point to them, you might think you can't do this, but just remember, there was a day when you couldn't walk. And now you can, my daughters do martial arts and they swim and play cricket and dance and everything. And it's like, yes, you can do all of those things, but there was a day when you couldn't walk. So don't tell me you can't do it. And it's the same when I can understand that trying to automate things in a business can be daunting, but it's just take the first step and fall on your nose, and then stand up and take the next one. So no, I think it's that, and then I sometimes think I come across as being reasonably flippant about mistakes and things like that. But I'm really appreciative of the work that my wife does and the fact that I have that perspective, because of her working with cancer patients, from my perspective, the worst day in my business day, the worst part of my business day is still better than the best part of hers. So and for me with that, it's just like, just try things. If you accidentally send an email to 100 people, send another one apologizing. Nobody got hurt. Just have a go, because the benefits to your business and by extension to your team and your customers is more than worth it.
Amen. Such good advice, great conversation and tips. I so appreciate you taking the time with us here today. I know it's morning for us, it's evening for you. So thank you for spending the evening with us. And for those of you that are watching, please hit the like and subscribe button. We never want to miss another episode. We have these amazing conversations with incredible entrepreneurs worldwide every Friday, or at least we try to, right here on the Terrific Tips podcast. So until next week, have a terrific